Okay, this is going to be my top 11 most annoying Pokemon in competitive battling. This is from my experience competitive battling. So these are my opinions, not yours. These are just the 11, I wouldn't say 11 Pokemon, I'd say 11 Pokemon slash strategies that people use that just annoy me and just make me want to never competitive battle again, basically. So let's get started. Number 11 is not specifically Fortress. I just use Fortress as an example. It's walls. Walls like Fortress, walls like Ferrothorn that just annoy me. They're just there to put up rocks, toxic spikes, stealth rocks, spikes. They're there to poison you. They're not there. They're just there to inflict status elements and stealth rocks and all that kind of thing. And it just annoys me because I rarely play defense. So I don't use walls very often, if at all. It's very rare that I use walls. And ironically, if I do use a wall, it is usually Fortress that I use. Because I don't like walls. I'm offense, pretty much. All offense, no defense, basically. Pretty much you battle me, everything's got a life orb or an assault vest, more than likely. When you battle me, pretty much. Or leftovers. Stuff like that. But that's really it as far as like walls go. Now there's specific walls that I'm going to get into later in the list in a minute. But that's the end of this segment. Next. Now here's a specific wall that annoys me. And that's Umbreon. Umbreon has no attack stat, no special attack stat, whatever. So if you use an Umbreon, basically you're running Wish, Protect, Toxic, and Heal Bell, basically. That's the set you run with it. And it is impossible to beat unless you have a really good fighting type. Which, if you know me, I always have a fighting type with me at all times. But my fighting types are usually prepared for flying types, dragon types, and fairy types. With Stone Edge, Ice Punch, and Poison Jab. And then that 4th slot is usually a fighting type move. And it's usually Cross Chop, Close Combat, something like that. Or High Jump Kick. And as everyone knows, those moves have a very good chance, except for Close Combat, of missing. And Close Combat lowers your defense and special defense. So pretty much, if you don't switch out next turn, you're probably getting killed. And plus, even if you do manage to bring in a fighting type, it's usually going to run Protect. This thing just annoys me so freaking much. And then even if you poison it or burn it or paralyze it, it's just going to use Heal Bell. And then it's got leftovers usually on it. And this thing will just drive you nuts. Really the only thing that you can counter with it, besides the fighting type, is Taunt. And as everyone knows, I don't play defense. So I don't carry Taunt on any of my Pokemon. Ever. I probably should, since these type of Pokemon just annoy the crap out of me. But yeah, that's really it. On Umbreon, at least. Next. Here is, yet again, another wall. I really don't like walls. This is Goodra. This thing is a special defensive tank. Usually with Goodra, some people run, Toxic, Draco Meteor, Power Whip, stuff like that. I mean, everyone usually runs an offensive set with this thing, and then just relies on its special defensive attack. Wait, I can't remember if it's special defensive or offensive defensive. I think it's good in both. I think it's good in HP, special defense, and defense. I just know, regardless if I use a special attack or a defense or a attack move, this thing takes it. Even if it's a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam attack, it takes it, regardless. Or if I use Play Rough, it takes it. So this thing is a pain to kill. Not to mention, it is ugly. I hate the way this thing looks. This thing looks less of a dragon than freaking Dragonite. I mean, this is supposed to be a dragon. I mean, oh, I can... If Salamence, Garchomp, and Flygon could talk, they would probably look at this thing and just be like, what the? They would look at Dragonite and this thing and think of, y'all aren't dragons, y'all are teddy bears. It's just like, oh. And this thing is an OU monster. If you notice, I don't play OU. I very rarely play OU. When I first started doing competitive battling, I didn't know what tiers are. I didn't know what OU meant, UU meant, RU, NU. Now I know what they mean. So I very rarely play OU because most of the stuff I hate is in OU. Except for a few things that got moved down to UU, and I'll get to that in a second. But, ooh, this thing just drives me nuts. Next up is a Moonguss. Why does this thing annoy me? Specifically Spore, a move that has a 100% chance of putting you to sleep. Now, most tiers have a sleep clause where you can only put one foe to sleep at a time. But whatever Pokemon it puts to sleep, it's pretty much useless. And then you gotta hopefully destroy that thing before it can put another one of your Pokemon to sleep. So basically, that's why this thing annoys me. Usually the set that it runs is Toxic, Spore, maybe Stun Spore, and Giga Drain. Also, Leech Seed and a few other moves that it runs. Also, Recover, Leftovers, and this thing takes pretty good hits. The only thing it's really weak to is Fire and Ice. So if you don't have a Fire or Ice move on your team, you're screwed. Because this thing can pretty much take everything else. Because it resists pretty much everything else, being Grass Poison. So, yeah. That's why a Moonguss annoys me. Now, granted, I like fighting types. So everyone's probably thinking, well, Breloom runs Spore too. Yes, Breloom does run Spore. And I do use Spore with my Breloom. Because it's pretty much required that you run Spore. Usually the set I run with my Breloom is Drain Punch, Spore, Mach Punch, and Iron Tail. That's usually the set I run. Iron Tail to cover fairies, Drain Punch to get health, Spore, and then Mach Punch in case something outspeeds me. But still, Breloom has a 4 times weakness to flying. So pretty much if you got a flying type on your team, it pretty much one hit KOs it. Easy. Also, this thing has a Moonguss has Effect Spore, which means any physical move you do on this can paralyze you, put you to sleep, or toxic you. So you can't hit this thing with physical attacks, and using fighting types like I mostly do, they're all physical. Ice Punch, Fire Punch, they're physical. Granted, I use other fire types, but still, I mean, the most fire types I use, you know, Infernape, Emboar, their main move is Flare Blitz, which is a physical move. So not only am I going to get recoil damage, I might get poisoned or put to sleep. Either way. So yeah. Next is Trevenant. I'm using Trevenant as a specific example, but basically this goes into Pokemon that use WilloWisp, which is going to include Rotom Wash, Trevenant, and Gourgeist, mainly ghost types that use this thing. If people don't know, WilloWisp, when you are burned, it cuts your attack stat in half. But this main thing that this thing does is Harvest, Leechy Berry, Substitute, Leech Seed, WilloWisp, Horn Leech. It basically just slowly but surely kills you. And unless you have something that can break through Substitute, you're not going to kill this thing. Or unless you poison it or burn it yourself. That's the only way to really get rid of this thing. This thing is a pain in the ass. I can't stand this thing. It is a ghost grass type, which means it's weak to ghost, fire, and ice. Fire, Ice, Flying types. I think that's it. Ghost, Flying, Grass, and Ice. Yeah, I think that's it. And then, you know, Dark, and I think it's weak to Dark. Ghosts are weak to Dark, right? I can't remember off the top of my head. And then I think it's weak to Fairy too. I think. But most grass types can carry Sludge Bomb with them, or you can just switch into a Fairy type. I mean, into something that resists Fairy. But a lot of Fairies aren't known as hitters. Like Flordrist is not a hitter. Sylveon is not a hitter. They can be, but they're not. They're mainly walls, is what those two are. Azumarill is a physical attacker, so and it can't get burned because it's a water type. But even still, it's a grass type. So you really wouldn't want to switch into Azumarill. Because you switch into Azumarill, yeah, you won't get burned, but you're going to get Horn Leeched and probably one-hit KO'd because of Azumarill being a water type and Trevenant being a grass type. I kind of went off on a little, I don't know what. Well, yeah, really the only way to counter this thing is pretty much Taunt as well, and then pretty much it's stuck using Horn Leech. But once it substitutes, it's going to use Harvest and that damn freaking Citrus Berry. So yeah, I can't stand this thing. Cannot stand this thing. And plus, since 6th Gen came out, this thing is on every single team. This thing is so overused, it's not even funny. But that's it for this one. Next is Cloyster. Specifically, Shell Smash and Icicle Spear Cloyster. Or what is it? Rock Blast, yeah. Pretty much, once this thing gets up Shell Smash, and then it uses a Power Herb to fix its defensive stats, this thing pretty much will sweep your whole dang team. Unless you have something that resists Ice and resists Rock. If you have something that resists Ice and Rock, you can pretty much take this thing out. But, like I said, you switch into a Fire type, Rock Blast. You switch into a Fighting type. Fighting types are not defensive Pokemon, unless you switch into Hariyama. That's really your only hope is Hariyama, as far as fighting types go. So this thing's a pain. Now granted, other Pokemon use Shell Smash, and I use other Pokemon that use Shell Smash. I've used Barbaracle. I've used, I want to say Hauntel. Not Hauntel. I've used Gorbis and Gorbis and Hauntel. I've used Gorbis and Hauntel. I've used Barbaracle. I've used that one rock crab. I forget its name. That one rock crab from Unova. I use him. I've used him a couple of times. But the main Pokemon I use with Shell Smash is Hauntel, Gorbis, and Barbaracle. Now here's the thing. Hauntel, Gorbis, Barbaracle, and that rock crab, they don't get moves that can hit 2 to 5 times. They get moves that hit once. Now granted, I have swept teams with Barbaracle, Gorbis, Hauntel, and that rock crab. But they all have counters to them, being that they're all single types except for Barbaracle being a rock water type. But pretty much a grass type will take him out in one hit. Hauntel and Gorbis, as long as you can survive from Gorbis, usually I run Hydro Pump and Ice Beam. With Hauntel, I run Ice Fang and Aquatel. And Aquatel and Ice Fang and Hydro Pump all have chances of missing as well. I'm just saying. So pretty much those can be taken out. Cloyster has 2 moves that can hit 2 to 5 times. So pretty much, unless you get lucky, it's going to freaking kill you. Unless you can one-hit KO this thing, you're probably going to die. And most people that use this thing, they carry Focus Sash with it. Granted, I use Focus Sash on my Hauntel and on my Gorbis as well, just to make sure they survive a Thunder Shock. But that's what main people use is a Focus Sash, and then once they get Shell Smash up, you're going to get Icicle Speared and Rock Blast to death. And it's going to sweep your whole team. That's why I do not like this thing. I hate this thing. Like I said, Huntail, Gorbis, and Barbarical don't have moves that hit multiple times. Their moves hit one time. One single time. But yeah. Next. One more thing I forgot to mention as far as Cloyster goes. Most people use Gorbis and Huntail, but mainly Gorbis, as baton passers. Baton passers are not on this list, but I also hate baton passers. I can't stand baton passers. It's annoying. But Gorbis and Huntail are mainly used as baton passers. I'm probably one of the few people that use Gorbis and Huntail for offense only. Because I don't like baton passing. I hate it. So, since I don't use them for baton passes, because I remember the next up is Sableye, but also I'm including all prankster Pokemon in this discussion. That would include Klefki, my most hated Pokemon. I hate that Pokemon more than anything. Klefki, I hate Whimsicott, and I hate Sableye. I don't use any of these three Pokemon. I have never used Whimsicott, Sableye, or Klefki. I will never use Sableye, Whimsicott, or Klefki in a showdown battle or a game through. I will never use any of those Pokemon because I cannot stand them. Basically, their strategy is to taunt, Thunder Wave, Toxic, put you to sleep, poison you. They're basically there to use status elements and nothing else. That's all they're there for. They'll use Protect, they'll use Recover, they'll use Leech Seed, whatever. And Sableye's only weakness is Fairy type. Klefki's only weakness, Fire types. Whimsicott has three weaknesses, being that it's weak to flying, four weaknesses, being that it's weak to flying, poison, 4 times weakness to poison, fire, and ice. That's what it's weak to. It's got 4 weaknesses. But if you can't get past that Protect, or you get poisoned or whatever, and they just stall you out, then you're pretty much screwed. Once your flying type goes down, you're pretty much done. And then every once in a while, someone will put, Shadow Ball, or maybe Energy Ball or Whimsicott, something like that, Giga Drain, something on that. Klefki, you can't really use an offensive move on Klefki because its attack stat sucks. It's basically there just for status elements and nothing else. So I hate it when I see any of those 3 Pokemon. And this thing, in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, this thing is getting a Mega Evolution. And there are actually people wanting this thing to get Wonder Guard. Shedinja's not on this list, but I'm giving it an honorable mention. I hate Wonder Guard Shedinja with a passion because the only thing that will kill that sucker is fire. If you don't have a fire type or a fire type attack on your side, pretty much Shedinja's going to destroy you. Well, not destroy you, basically just stall you to death. So yeah, I'll include Shedinja on this too, but there's actually people wanting Mega Sableye to have Wonder Guard. Thankfully, I looked it up, and Mega Sableye still has the same ability in Prankster. Because if this thing got Wonder Guard, it would be so uber broken it's not even funny. Thankfully, Shedinja is such a bad Pokemon, not too many people carry it in competitive battling. But every once in a while, I'll run into a competitive battler that will have a Shedinja. And whenever I see it, I look at my team and I'm like, dang it, I have no fire types on my team. And I just forfeit the battle. I don't even try. Because once I see a Shedinja, I'm like, done. Done. So, yeah, that's basically it on pranksters. I hate all pranksters. Okay, this is not just Sharpedo. This is specifically Pokemon that use Speed Boost and Protect. So, Ninjask, Sharpedo, Blaziken, Scolipede, Yamega. All these Pokemon are on the list. Granted, I do use Blaziken and Ubers when I play Ubers, which I very, very rarely play Ubers. But I do use Blaziken and Ubers. And when anyone plays me, they are so shocked that I'm using a Mega Blaziken and I don't have Protect on it. Because I can't stand people that use Protect. I do have speed boost on it, but I don't use protect. I don't use it. And everyone's just so surprised that I don't run protect on my Mega Blaziken. Because I hate protect so freaking much. I hate protect and I hate substitute with a passion. Protect, substitute, and detect just make me go nuts. Anytime I see a Pokemon, and I know for a fact that it has protect, detect, or substitute, it just makes me want to go crazy. Because there's very, very few attacks that can break through protect and substitute, and they're very weak attacks, except for like Bug Buzz. But Feint Attack, and Feint Attack can't even break through protect. It can break through substitute, but not protect. So yeah, and Feint Attack only does 30 power. And really the only Pokemon that can really use it to its full advantage is Technician users, and the only Technician user that gets it is Scissor and Cypher. And even then, it only has, I think, like 50 power after that. So, I can't stand it. And they're given so many weak Pokemon that were never used, like, granted, a lot of people used Scolipede before it got Speed Boost. A lot of people did use Scolipede before it got Speed Boost, but now that Scolipede's got Speed Boost, even more people are using it. I mean, when I played OU, I saw Scolipede very, very often, but as soon as it got Speed Boost, I started seeing it everywhere. Same thing for Sharpedo and UU. I think it's UU or RU, one of the two, I can't remember. But I very rarely saw a Sharpedo used ever. But as soon as it got Speed Boost, that's all you see is Speed Boost, Protect, Crunch, Waterfall. That's pretty much the set you run with Sharpedo. Ninjask is basically there to be a baton passer. You use it for substitute, protect, Swords Dance, and then baton pass. That's what Ninjask is for. So yeah, Yamanga, same thing. Speed boost, protect, substitute, maybe toxic or baton pass is what it's there for. And I can't stand Yamanga whatsoever. So yeah, I really don't like Pokemon that use protect and speed boost. And Blaziken is one of my favorite Pokemon. And in my opinion, it should be UU or it should be either OU or UU. Because it's, even with speed boost and protect, it's so dang frail. If you can survive a fire attack or a fighting attack, it's pretty much dead in one hit. Same thing with Mega Lucario. It is Uber's. Okay, regular Lucario went down from OU to UU. I'm perfectly fine with regular Lucario going down from OU to UU because regular Lucario went down from OU to UU. I'm perfectly fine with Lucario going down from OU to UU because it's better in UU because it's so frail. Pretty much an earthquake will OHKO it. A fire attack will OHKO it. A psychic will two-hit OHKO it. Now, and same thing with Mega Lucario, especially now that Mega Lucario's Uber. An earthquake, psychic will hit OHKO it. A fire attack will OHKO it because it's so dang frail. It has no defenses and no special defense, no regular defense. And Lucario and Blaziken are two of my favorite Pokemon. And I don't see why they're Ubers. Everyone says Blaziken's Ubers because of speed boost. Big deal, so it can outspeed everything. There's a lot of Pokemon that can outspeed everything. It's still frail. And everyone says Mega Lucario and regular Lucario, pretty much if you set up Nasty Plot or Combine or Swords Dance, depending if you're running physical or special Lucario, you can pretty much sweep everything. That is true, if you can take the hit. But yeah, that's pretty much true. If you can take a hit. If Lucario is setting up and you hit it with an Earthquake or a Fire Blast or Blaze Kick or Flare Blitz or anything like that, it's done. Or hit it with two Psychics, it's done. Even with, Swords Dance and Power Up Punch combination, it's still frail. So, in my opinion, Blaziken and Mega Blaziken should be OU. In my opinion, Blaziken and Mega Blaziken should both be OU. And if Speed Boost makes it Uber, then fine. Make its ability Speed Boost Uber, and have Blaze be OU and UU or something like that. And Mega Lucario and regular, no, not regular, Mega Lucario. There should be no reason that Mega Lucario is an Uber. So Mega Lucario should be OU. And I'm perfectly fine with regular Lucario being moved down from OU to UU. Because now that Talonflame is in OU, pretty much it will wreck. It will completely wreck regular Lucario in OU. So I'm perfectly fine with it getting moved down from OU to UU. But that's really it as far as Speed Boost Protect Pokemon goes. Next. If you watched my top 20 least favorite Pokemon, if you watched that countdown of my top 20 least favorite Pokemon, you should expect Blissey to be on this list. I cannot stand this thing. Thank God it didn't get a fairy typing, because if it did get a fairy typing, it should have been moved to Ubers. That's how much this thing drives me insane. Basically, Toxic, Protect, Substitute, Soft Boil, Seismic Toss, that's pretty much what you're basically going to see on a Blissey. Thunder Wave, Heal Bell, that's pretty much what you're going to see on a Blissey. So pretty much, if you run, say you use Espeon and it uses Magic Bounce against the Toxic, well, it's just going to heal itself from the Toxic. Pretty much the only thing that's going to beat this thing is Close Combat, Superpower, or Cross Chop. That's pretty much your only hope of beating this thing. If you don't have a fighting type, or someone that has, those moves, also Focus Blast, if you don't have one of those 4 moves, this thing is pretty much going to slowly but surely stall your team to death. That's basically what it's designed to. It is a giant freaking wall. It has a shitload of HP, and it's just the most annoying thing ever. Now here's another Tears rant. This thing got moved down from OU to UU. Why the hell did this thing get moved down to OU to UU? When I went from playing in OU to UU, RU, and NU, I was so happy not to see Blissey. And then I look at the Tears changes for this month, and this thing got moved down to UU. At least Lucario got moved down to UU too, so pretty much I can use Lucario with a Close Combat or an Aura Sphere to take this thing out. But still, Soft Boil, Protect, Toxic, Substitute, Seismic Toss, it just drives you nuts seeing this thing. I don't get how this thing is UU. It should be OU at the least. My opinion, it should be Ubers. But that ain't gonna ever happen. So yeah, I can't stand this thing, to say the least. We're going to go to the next Pokemon on this list. I mentioned this thing when I talked about Trevenant. Rotom Wash. This thing is a pain. Volt Switch, Hydro Pump, WilloWisp, Thunderbolt is basically what is run on this thing. Basically, you can't bring in anything on this thing except a grass type. WilloWisp, it'll burn your physical attacker. Fire types are immune to it, but it's a water type, so you're not going to switch into one. You could switch into your own water type, but it's an electric type. So pretty much the only thing that's going to stop this thing is grass, which would basically be Venusaur or something like that. I've never used one of these things because I can't stand it. I don't know if this thing can learn Ice Beam, but if this thing can learn Ice Beam, there negates its grass weakness, period. So I don't know if it can learn Ice Beam or not. I've never used one of these things. I can't stand this thing. But I know 95% of water types can learn Ice Beam or Ice Punch. So, yeah. So I'm pretty sure that will negate its grass weakness right there. And most grass types, I stress the word most, are very slow. Venusaur is slow. Torterra is slow. Meganium is slow. Sceptile is pretty fast. Breloom has decent speed. But Breloom is a physical attacker. Here comes the WilloWisp, unless your Toxic Orb activates first. So, yeah. Or unless you can get a spore off before it switches out. So, yeah, can't stand this thing whatsoever. And what sucks is this thing is the counter to the most annoying Pokemon on my list as far as competitive battling. Think about what I just said. Next. This asshole should be Ubers. It should be Ubers. Mega Lucario and Blaziken are in Ubers, but this thing is not in Ubers. Why is it not in Ubers? Everyone wants to say it's not in Ubers because it's 4 times weak to Stealth Rocks. That is true, but it switches in Stealth Rocks. You get your rock. Okay, you get your rocks up. This thing comes in. The first thing it's gonna do is Brave Bird you. It's gonna survive, and then next turn it's gonna roost. Thanks to Gale Wings. Gale Wings should make this thing Ubers, because it's gonna Brave Bird everything, and it's gonna roost. Brave Bird roost. Brave Bird roost. And then if you bring in something that is immune to that resists flying types, such as I don't know, trying to think off the top of my head, a steel type. Just off the top of my head, a steel type. Flare Blitz. I've actually seen people choice scarf this thing, which, in my opinion, is pretty dumb to choice scarf a Talonflame. Granted, I have no problem with it, but still. And even if you switch into something that resists flying, you switch into a water type or something like, or a steel type or something like that, something that can't be taken out with Brave Bird or Flare Blitz. It's gonna U-turn out of there and get out, is what it's gonna do. This thing will pretty much wreck everything, especially my fighting types. Basically, my best hope for this thing is pretty much Sock and Throw with Sturdy, or my other Pokemon with Focus Sash, and hope that Stone Edge does not miss, or that it does not use Roost and it only have a 2 times weakness. So I cannot stand this thing in competitive battling. It should be Ubers. If Blaziken and Mega Lucario are Ubers, this thing should be Ubers. Next. Oh wait, no, not next. That's the end of my list. Had a brain fart for a minute. That's the end of my list, and Talonflame is the most annoying Pokemon in competitive battling that I ever have to face. And this is why I don't play OU. Done.